When and how to talk to kids about sex education. Should we even talk to our kids about sex education? I've had some mothers, some parents ask me to talk about this topic, being that I'm a social worker, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Life with Ruzhoff, once again, thank you so much for joining us. For everyone that is new here, you're very welcome. Don't forget to join the family by subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing our videos. So first of all, what's sex education? Sex education is basically creating awareness. Sex education is about creating awareness about, I would say, our gender, our sexuality, and everything that comes along with it. For the parents that have asked me, the questions were always, when do I talk to my child about sex education? You should talk to your child about sex education as early as possible. I would say latest by the age of 8. Personally, also, that's when I started. Like, of course, you have to consider the kind of language you use, what exactly you tell them about. It has to be age appropriate. So at the age of 8, you can start by explaining to them why they look the way they do. For example, my sons, I had to explain them because I used to take a shower with my kids, when they were younger. So of course they would notice I'm different from them, or they say I have boobs and they don't have boobs. So I would start with such small things and explain such conversations, why I look the way I look and they look differently. So that is very important. For example, that's how you can start, tell them about their sexuality, why they are like that. And very important, try to remove the taboos. Growing up, especially in the African setting, no one named things by their name. No one named private parts or sexual parts by the names. They always had what do you call them, like nicknames or pet names or whatever, and that's not okay, because first of all, you're creating the taboos, and secondly, the way our parents would explain it to us, it was something like you never talk about something you shouldn't be comfortable with, something that is just there but it's not okay. Your sexuality is a part of your sexuality is very important. Your sexuality has a purpose, and those are things you should explain to your kids. But of course, at the age of 8, you don't go into details. You can talk about, this is, if they ask me about my boobs, like, this is just a, just like your skin, it's just a skin. Mine is more raised, and its purpose is, it gave you milk, while you were growing up, for example. And the older they get, you can also start to get deeper. But you all have to be aware that, especially this generation, they get into puberty very early. I've seen girls that have got into puberty, even got their periods at the age of 10 or 11. So you really have to be keen and make sure that your children are informed by the time they get into those next milestones. So I would say by the age of 9 or 10, because they're also starting to learn about that in school, get more now into the details, and why is it very important? We're not even talking about the parts, but you also have to teach them about the hygiene. Girls need a different kind of, let me say, hygiene compared to boys. How do you clean yourself up? Why do you have to clean yourself up? To avoid all kinds of infections. You have to teach them when they start getting now pubic hair and all that, how to shave, how to keep it neat and clean there, and what to watch out for, especially in boys when they hit the age of 11. There's a very big danger of getting tumors in their testicles. So those are things you really have to talk about. If the kids are uncomfortable with you doing that, checking them, you can do it. You can also always go to the doctor, but it's not appropriate because you can't go to the doctor every once a month. So you have to teach your kids how to check their, their now I'm also having a problem saying that, like their testicles, to check if there are no tumors. And kids who get tumors at that age, it's very dangerous if it's discovered late, because it mostly ends fatal. So it's very important for parents to create that awareness. And when my son clocked that age, I went with him to the doctor so that he could do that initial explaining. I knew he wouldn't feel comfortable me touching him, so the doctor had to do that, touch him and show him how to feel for that. Just like we, the ladies, check our boobs for, tumors, the same way boys between the age of 12 and above should be checking their testicles, their private parts, to see if there are not any tumors, because it can be really, really fatal. And that's why it shouldn't be a matter of, I'm ashamed of it, or I can't do that, but you have to do it. And me being a single mom, people say, oh, if you have boys, it's their dad to do them. My husband or my ex-husband doesn't feel comfortable doing that. I remember one time we had a talk, and I was telling him, you have to teach the boys about the hygiene now that they're getting one. So, oh my God, I can't do that. You do that, they're very close to you. So even as a mom, you can do that, because like I said, for me, I I know that word in German, enttabuisieren, you know. I removed the taboos when they were still very young. Like I told you, we used to shower together, we used to bathe together, which is very normal, you know, until a certain age. And I tried introducing these things to them slowly by slowly and showing them it's normal. It's just a part of your body. It's nothing to be shamed about. It's nothing to be like, oh my God, I have to hide my penis. Oh my God, I have to hide my VJ, you know. So when the time came, of course, it was very easy for me to do that. So I would advise you, especially the moms in the African setting, not even just that, I think here in Europe, because I have had DMs, that's the reason I'm doing that. Many moms have told me to talk about that. So basically, start as early as possible. Another thing another mother asked me was, when do I talk to my child about contraception? So before we even get there, I did a video about intentional parenting. Make sure you watch it. I'm going to try and include it at the end of the video, but just go and check it in my playlist. Intentional parenting is very important. As a mom, as a dad, you have to make sure you have to create a relationship where your children are comfortable talking to you. A relationship where your children will feel more comfortable coming to you with any questions instead of going to the internet or a stranger, which is unfortunately most of the time the case. The children go on the internet, gather crazy false information. Now we have a very big pornography industry, which is terrible. Our kids get their first sexual explanations there and they think that's the right thing to do. And as a social worker, I've had such situations where, I'll give an example. This boy, 16-year-old, was having a girlfriend, probably had watched some of those videos, and he did some things to her where he thought it was normal. They didn't even like get to sexual penetrate, but it was that kind of thing that anyone could tell he had seen that on these crazy videos. And then the girl was shocked, was completely, you know, like, oh my God, what's this? And told the parents, and then the parents thought maybe he wanted to rape the girl, but it wasn't the case. And of course the case landed on my desk, you know. But that's the problem nowadays. You really have to make sure that your children feel comfortable coming to you with their problems. You have to make sure that your children are comfortable talking to you, because it's only you who can give them honest and first-hand information. So now we jump to the pills. When do I talk to my kids about contraception? I started talking to my kids about that. Our first conversation was, I think, at the age of 10, when I told my children about the HPV immunization, that is the human papillomavirus. If you have a girl, you know, it's very important. Thank God we have the opportunity to get your daughter immunized against this HPV. You know, most women get cervical cancer because of this HPV virus and several other cancers. And this is also through our sexual history, you know. So we also have the opportunity to get the boys immunized to protect their future girlfriends and wives. And I had this conversation with my boys. So that's when I started the contraception talk. I told them, well, of course, girls can take pills and take injections and use coils, but also you boys, you can protect your loved one, your girlfriend, by wearing protection, you know. And if you're to engage in any sexual activity with your girlfriend, you really have to talk about it. What kind of protection are we using, you know? And then again, for the moms, it's very, very important to make sure that your daughters can come to you for questions, because as you know, here in Europe, once a kid clocks 13, they have a right to go to a doctor for this kind of advice without even your knowledge. Unfortunately, most kids start on contraception very, very early, at a very, very young age. I know a girl that started contraception at the age of 12. Like, you know, which gynae does that? But you can't change that. If a girl goes there and says, I'm sexually active and I need a contraception, they will get it. But we all have to keep in mind that these contraceptives have dire side effects. Dire side effects. We all know what happens with thrombosis and blood clots and weight, and those are even like the simple side effects. So as a mom, I wouldn't want my child to start, for example, on pills at the age of 12. So that's where you come in as a mom, to have these conversations. Talk to your child about the available alternatives, like using maybe protection, you know, condoms. They don't have to take pills. They don't have to start with a coil at the age of 12. They can also abstain. I mean, what are you doing having sex at the age of 12? You don't really have to. But if they must, then you have to offer them alternatives of contraception. And that's why it's very, very key and important to talk to your child. So for the mom that asked me, what age do I talk to my child about contraception? I would say around the age of 10, 11. And of course, it's up to you to gauge. If you're a keen mom and you're doing intentional parenting, you can tell if your child is ready for that or not. For example, my boys, they are now like into teenagehood. One of them is already officially a teenager, but their behavior, when I compare them to their peers, is completely different. They are not like full-on teenagers. They are really, I would call them slow or late bloomers. Just like myself, I was a late bloomer. I told you I never even had a boyfriend until the age of 21, like even thinking about it, So I can see that my sons are late bloomers. They're not like full-blown in, I'm dating 10 girls already and all that. But yeah, you really have to keep that in mind and watch your child. And if you notice that they are developing faster, they're maturing faster, or if they've gotten their periods, you really must talk about that. And when you talk about sexual education, like I said, we have to talk about the hygiene. If you have a girl and they start getting their periods, you have to talk about to them, how do they keep themselves clean? What kind of protection do they want to use as regards, the different types we use, be it pads, be it oh my god, what is it called? I've even forgotten because I use pads anyway. So the different kind of available means that they have to use, and of course their hygiene. And not just that, you have to explain to them, what does it mean? What does getting your periods mean? Why are they getting their periods? Explain to them, what that means, so they don't even have to feel like ashamed or crushed about it. Explain to them why boys don't get their periods, and so on and so forth. And that's why as a mom or a parent, you have to have your A game on. You have to learn, research, because you really have to have this information, some of these biological things. I have to be able to explain to my kid, you're having your period because you have an egg that didn't get fertilized, and then it has to be shed, and so on and so forth, and that's the way your uterus gets to clean out. You really have to have this information. So as a mom or as a parent, because this is not just for moms, we have now different family constellations. We have two dads raising kids, so you really have to make sure that you're informed and be the number one first stop for your child, the person that they come to. I'm also still thinking of the question another mom asked me was, let me see if I wrote it here. Oh, we're talking about relationships. Now, this is an interesting one. So we have different cultures. I'll just use the African and the European culture. Here in Europe, children start having girlfriends at the age of 4, even in nursery. But those are like, not proper girlfriend, what you'd have in your sense of mind, Those are platonic relationships. But I know that kids here in Europe get into serious relationships even at the age of 8. Like I told you, kids these days are blooming faster. So I know there are kids who had their first sex at the age of 9, at the age of 10, So those for them are real relationships. So you have to think about things like, what happens if my child gets their first heartbreak? You really have to keep that in mind. And the question is, are you going to accept that? Do you want to respect the fact that your child is maybe having a crush on their, classmate or age mate, and they are calling themselves a couple? For us here in Europe, it's very normal. And honestly, comparing the setting that I grew up in Africa, of course, that would have been a no-go. How do I come to my mom and tell her I have a boyfriend at the age of 10? Impossible. And that is the sad bit. I'm not blaming my parents because that's the best know they knew how. But I think for me, even if I hadn't moved to Europe, I still would have been okay with that for my kids. Because like I said, we learn from the way we are brought up. The way we are brought up affects us in many different ways, either positively or negatively, or you learn from it. And for me as a mom, I was always open to my kids having girlfriend and boyfriend. I have sons, so they were open to having girlfriends. They've never had like really girlfriends, but they always knew. I always came up with things like, if you have a girlfriend and you want to take her for ice cream, you can do that. I can give you money, or you can get money from your bank card and do that. It's something that we've always been open about. And lucky enough, like I said, intentional parenting. I've been an intentional parent. I have very good relationship with my kids. I have these conversations with them. So we talk about them, and being someone that is divorced and has been dating, of course, I also talk to my kids about these things, like we talk about love, and I tell them about my partner, and so it's been very normal with us. So you have to keep in mind that there will be heartbreaks even when it's platonic relationships. Just make sure you're the kind of mom that your child can come to you, because I know it can be very, very heartbreaking. Those platonic relationships, the kids at that age are not so hardened like us who have been through life where relationships, and for them they think it's going to be forever. So when it ends, it's heartbreaking. And the worst bit about it, they normally date people like in their class, so you have to continue seeing this girl or this boy even after breaking up. So if you're having a sensible kid, or a kid that doesn't have a chance to work through that, You know, they might even end up getting depressed, what we call teenage depression. Very, very common. So watch out, keep your antennas open, take time with your kids, have chats with your kids. Even when you're a busy mom, create 1 hour in a week where you really get to sit down with your kids, talk to them about different topics, even if it's just playfully. So you make sure you're really up to date with their emotions, with their feelings, and most of all, that's they can come to you. Okay. I'm looking at the questions that people sent me. Another person was saying, yes. So in the African culture, like I was saying, for African parents, it's about time. We're in 2023. Talk to your kids about this. Be open about this. And not forgetting, in this generation, while growing up, I'm sure it was also there, but it was not like open in the world. Like now, we also have, what do you call it? Similar gender relationship, you know, the girl loving a girl, the boy loving a boy, the girl loving a boy and a girl, you know, bisexual, hetero. We no longer have only the hetero, and it was never the case, let's be honest. It was just not public, but from time immemorial, I've had these conversations with my mom. There were always homosexual relationships, lesbian relationships, bisexual relationships, only that they were not out there in the open. So as parents, we have to be sensitive to these things. Talk to our kids about this so that they are also sensitive how they deal with other people. But it's also a possibility that your own child is maybe bisexual, hetero is the norm, bisexual, homosexual, lesbian. Let it be something that you get to talk about. And as a mom, as a parent, I would advise you, don't get harsh on your child. Don't come with conversations like, oh my God, that's an abomination, that's terrible. That's something you should be open to talk about. Because I imagine as a parent, the only thing that matters to you is your child being happy. So if your child is happy and you really want them to be happy, then you have to accept them and respect them the way they are. So for me as a mom, as a boy mom, if my sons came to me and they told me, I'm in love with a boy, I'd be okay with that. If they say I'm in love with a tree or a car, we have also non-binary people. Whatever they love, whoever they love, as long as they're happy, I'm really fine with that. So those are also some of the things you have to keep in mind and be open to. I'm trying to make sure that I didn't forget any question, but like I was saying, for the African culture, for the moms in Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, because I also got those questions, please try to be more intentional with your parenting. I'm not going to say try to be more like us in Europe here, but try to be more intentional, because at the end of the day, parenting should be about love. Parenting should be about support. Parenting should be about presence, unconditional love, and wanting the best for your kids. So being harsh in the shouting with the kids and beating them or not listening to their needs and desires is not helping you or the child. My conclusion, again, like I said, because that was our question, when and why, how can I talk to my children about sex education? You should start as early as possible, and I would say as early as the age of 8. Even before, we have a stage. Now, I don't want to get too biological. We have a stage, for example, where the kids, for example, first discover their first erection. We all know that fascination stage, between the age of even 0 months to 3 years, like they're fascinated with their private parts. Even girls, like they touch themselves, they have those feelings, but they don't know what that is. So even at that time, you know, when you're trying to teach your child not to touch themselves all the time, like little boys, they notice that they get erections and then they're excited about it and they keep doing it, which can be very uncomfortable, especially if you're doing it in public or playing with other kids. So when you're trying to tell them don't touch yourself all the time, much as it may be fun, you can start that also as a form of sex education, you know, by saying, oh, that's not good, you can't keep touching yourself in public like that, or you're making the others uncomfortable. But that is very normal that you're getting an erection, or it's very normal to wake up in the morning and you have an erection, or when you have kids that have started getting wet dreams, they should be able to come to you and not think something is wrong with them, and be able to explain to them in a child-friendly manner, or let me say in a teenage-friendly manner, and make it as positive as possible, not like in the African culture where they would say, believe me, in the African culture, if a child came to their parents and they're like, I had a wet dream, they would say, oh, you're a spoiled boy, you're a spoiled child. Or if you're a girl and you ask your mom, oh my God, why am I wet? You know, they would think, oh, this one is spoiled, she's already having sex and all that. No, look at it positively, because we know it's normal, we all know it happens, we all went through that. So explain to your child what that is, what that means. And of course, for their hygiene, if they're having that in their bed, that they have to get their sheets washed or their underpants cleaned and so on and so forth, make it as normal and as natural as possible, because matter of fact, that's what it is. It's us, the humans, that try to make that a taboo, but in the real sense, that is a natural form of life that we all go through at different stages and different parts of life. So moms, dads, and all parents out there, it's very important and very crucial to talk to children about these conversations, to have sexual educational talks with your kids as early as the age of 8. And it should be a continuous talk, because like I said, we have to make sure that our children don't end up watching videos, these sexual videos that we all have online, and believing that's the norm. We really have to guide our kids along that way. But most important, you have to be your children's best friend, in the sense of you should be the person they come to when they have questions. I'm really hoping I've answered all your questions, but I would love so much to have this conversation go on in the comment section. For all the moms, for all the parents here, let me know what your experiences are. Even your personal experiences. When did you get these talks with your parents? Or did you ever get these talks? Some kids get them from their friends, like I said, or if you went to boarding school, you learn them from your friends. So let's get active in the comment section. I'd really love to go on and chat with you. And if you still have any questions as regarding this, like I said, I'm a social worker. This is also my field of work. I would love to go on and talk more. Until next time, hit that subscription button, enable notifications so you don't miss out on anything. Catch you.